Better late than never. Bam, we're live. Good morning, everybody. Dale, what's up, brother? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Dale, when you were on the Bret Weinstein podcast, you had your shirt button, and now you're on my podcast, and you're all casual and shit.
Yeah, that's intentional.
Dale, Caleb, Dale.
How are you?
Nice to meet you, Dale.
Dale, Caleb is deployed in an undisclosed location somewhere in the sandbox.
Oh, sweet.
He comes on here every morning. It's not morning for him, but he comes on here every morning with me.
Oh, so what is it, like 3:30 in the afternoon there or some shit?
6 p.m.
Oh, jeez.
Allison NYC. Hi, Dale.
Holy smokes. There's a blast from the past. Wow. How are you?
Before we start with the great Dale Saran, who has a pretty amazing just life, military career, and then as I know him in maybe the fourth or fifth iteration of his life, when he showed up, well, actually, he maybe showed up before me even. We crossed paths. He was the general counsel at CrossFit Inc., and we worked together for more than 10 years, very, 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 very closely. I want to say a couple things. I don't believe in transparency in people's lives. That seems to be a buzzword. When they fired Dave Castro, there were people putting a lot of pressure on Eric Roza to be transparent and say why he fired Dave. Even though I'm no fan of Eric Roza, I thought that was bullshit. If Dave wants to say why he got fired, Dave could say. I just use that as an example of, like, not everyone owes transparency. I don't owe transparency to anyone because I'm just my own person. That being said, I want to tell you something because it's been quite the remarkable week here at the Sevan Podcast. 90% of all the money that I've made from this podcast, and I say this to you guys because I want to share this with you because you guys have donated so much money to me, and this show has generated money. 90% of that money that you guys send to me goes to raising my kids. It either goes to paying my mortgage, paying for their whatever they need. I have the entire time of doing this show, I haven't bought a pair of underwear, a pair of socks. I've done nothing with your money except help raise my kids. The other 10% are just stupid little checks that I send for $100 to Caleb here and there, or to Matt Souza, or that we use to buy computers or microphones. And I can't tell you how appreciative I am of that. Like, you are helping me raise my kids on a level that's, I take so fucking seriously. Every dollar you guys have ever sent me goes to the most serious thing I do in my life and what brings me the most pleasure in my life, and that is my 3 sons. And I not only use that to help my sons, but it leaks off on shitloads of other kids. If I may say, in the most humble yet most arrogant thing I'm going to say, every kid that crosses paths with my kids, it's a blessing for those kids. And when my kids are in the classes with those kids all benefit from the money that you're paying that allow my kids to be in tennis, skateboarding, jiu-jitsu, music, all of that. And I want you to know that all of that money goes to individuals in my area that are basically small business owners. These are individuals who've dedicated their lives to help take care of kids, to help raise kids, to make kids better people. So one of the things that you can think about every time you've given money to me, whether it's $1 or $100, is it's going to some guy named John Smith who teaches kids tennis here in Santa Cruz, California, and you're putting food on his plate too. So I just want you to know that's the ecosystem that you're supporting. And I really, really, really appreciate it. Wadzami, thank you. One of the most consistent and best donors we've ever had for Avi's next pair of chonies. Thank you. Those are underwear, I think.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I wasn't sure that $5 for chonies was that he can just give you, like, for hand grenades.
I also want to share this one final thought, just so you know, in the last 10 days, without a doubt, the foremost powerful people in the CrossFit ecosystem, people that probably you might not even know their names, have either texted me or called me numerous times to tell me that we're absolutely murdering it. And this is pretty damn cool. And there's this core 200 of you that come on here every morning. I know sometimes the numbers go up over 1,000, but I know that there's the core couple hundred of you. It's because of you. And we've done it with positivity. We don't attack people for the most part. We look at things. we look at things honestly and fairly, and the podcast is being recognized by it. But it just shows you once again the I don't know if I want to say the vocal minority, but this you guys have really been profound. What happened on the Sevan Podcast Instagram in the last 24 hours is man. People always say it humbles me. It doesn't humble me. It flattered me. I don't know what that means when people say they're humbled. Like they accept the Academy Award and they go, "I'm humbled." What does that mean? Isn't it? I'm flattered and I'm proud. I'm humbled when someone punches me in the face. I'm flattered and I'm proud when what?
I got humbled last night. I'm sitting here kind of I'm like, I wonder if Sevan can tell I'm listing to the right. I got a guy drill me playing hockey last night. I think he separated my shoulder. I felt it come out. Oh, he smashed me. He took advantage. I was in a really vulnerable spot. I played in a no check league, and this guy I subbed in. It was 10:20 last night. One of the guys who runs the league calls me up. He's like, "Hey, we need subs. Can you come play?" And the rink's about 15 minutes up.
No check league, Dale, means that they're not supposed to do that.
They're not supposed to do that. And so I didn't brace myself because I didn't anticipate. It was like a 50-50 puck between us. And I reached out and I was leaning down and I was cutting away from the guy to try and not smack into him,
Yeah.
And he took advantage of it and was like, just unloaded on me. Like it was like we were playing.
Why? How is that cool? Does everyone kind of boo him?
No, well, the guys on my team were like crazy. The refs missed it. I mean, it's tough. It's beer league hockey at 11. But you get some guys who you know how it is. You got people who in WADs. Why are people cheating in WADs where it's like you're never going to be in the games? The scouts aren't here. Noble is not here to sponsor you. You're never going to compete. But yet, why do people do that? Right? I mean, we know the answer. The answer is ego, of course. But
dickheads.
Yeah, that's a shortened way.
So explain this to me. It's 10 o'clock at night and you get a text, "Hey, can you come play hockey?" So you go out there at 11 p.m.
No, it was earlier in the day. They put out a little call to some of us, and they're like, "Hey, the C League, the teams are. It's tough to keep the league running, and Friday night.
This is ice hockey, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so earlier in the day, they're like, "Hey, anybody who can make it, we're going to be short. Both teams need guys. Blah blah blah." And so middle of the day, I talked to, the wife. I'm like, "Hey, what are we doing? We going out tonight or anything?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, you all right if I go, beer league? I wanted the HGH league, 10 to laugh. Nice. I probably should be in the HGH league. I'd feel a lot better today." So, I rogered up. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go." So once I commit, I'm going to go out there. So it's 10:20 at night, go out there playing. Great game. It turned out, went to overtime. We lost in overtime, but still a good game. But I got drilled. I came in last night. I couldn't even sleep in my own bed. I told the wife, I came in. I was just like, she's sleeping. I dragged myself downstairs to the guest room because I couldn't lay right. My shoulders all jacked up. I've had it dislocated and popped out a handful of times and separated. So I got a pretty good sense of what that feels like. And so right now I'm like, oh.
What quarter was that?
What quarter?
Yeah. Did you get hit?
It was in the. I think it happened late in the second.
And then were you out for the rest of the game?
No, I played the rest of the game.
Oh my goodness.
There's only one more period after that.
Yeah, there's only one more. Tough enough.
There's only three. There's only three periods in hockey.
Just 3 periods. Yeah.
Oi.
Yeah.
Oi.
Do you guys play 20-minute periods?
No, we played 12 minutes stop time.
Okay.
Caleb knows. He's a hockey guy. You can tell. He's got hockey guy written all over him. He's got the hockey mustache too. He's got the serious. Yeah, look at that.
I watch sometimes.
He's going for the Lanny McDonald porn stash special. I like it. Good for you. Nice.
Dale was recently on Bret Weinstein's Dark Horse podcast.
Yep.
Oh wow, look at this. If you I'll send you a link in the private chat.
What, Allison NYC sending you some money?
Yeah, is that what just popped up?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Oh, Allison, you're too kind. Thank you. Yikes. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Spin. Good morning. Can you give us the back? So by the way, can you just go to the homepage? Look what he's done here. He's made it so that look at that. The podcast you did with him is the default podcast that automatically plays.
A lot of people have hit me up over it. He's got a pretty good following. He's a nice guy, by the way. I spoke to him a good bit offline. It was really funny. They do in their recording, everybody's on they do each on a separate stream. And then, I guess they engineer it. You probably know better than I do about how that all works.
They do that for picture quality. It records to your computer, and then your computer sends it automatically to the post-production crew.
Right. So afterwards, we have to. They go, hey, you need to finalize your stream. Something didn't go through, so you got to go in and finalize it. Right. So I log in, and this guy, the guy right there, who's got he's got like Caleb's mustache. Hell, Caleb, that looks like he could be your brother. John Bowes there looks like he could be. Look at that. That's eerie. Like, there's Caleb's brother, John. So John Bowes is an Air Force pilot. He's a captain. Good guy. And F-16
Makes
guy.
Sense.
And he's trying to direct me to log in, right? So we log in to finalize the stream, and he's like, okay, I think you got it. He logs off, and I'm staring at what looks like it's Bret, just like that. And I'm like, I thought it was like the screen. So I'm just dicking around, right? And then at some point, like, he blinked or something, and I realized I wasn't looking at an image. It was Bret was still logged in and sitting there. And John and I were talking. I go, have you been listening this whole time? And Bret's like, yeah, that's me, not a mannequin. And so I got to spend probably, 15, 20 minutes chatting with him afterwards. He's a super sweet guy.
Did he come to life a little bit? He's so, I was going to say stiff, but I'll choose a different word. He's so sober on the show.
He's I think he takes his scientist kind of role seriously. And so he approaches it. I noticed that about like some of the folks, around the science thing with Greg. It's kind of that same trying to be dispassionate about whatever it is that you're investigating. So I think he just tries to be as detached as he can from it, but he clearly cares, and
I wonder if it's because they're raised from that generation that our parents were raised in. There's still a lot of people who do it too, that there is a posture of professionalism that they want to give. I mean, we see all these people who appeal to, the fallacy of appealing to authority in their argument, but the doctor said, and so I feel like that's kind of what he's doing. He's like, hey, he doesn't want to show any chinks in the armor.
Yeah.
And he wants to come across super professional, but he wasn't like that off the air. Did you ever see him laugh?
No, I had him cracking up afterwards. I got him with a couple good ones, and he was he had somebody who wanted some help with some other things, and so he introduced me to some other people. But he's super nice, and he had some other folks on. He did a series of those, so he's maybe the most mainstream guy who's talking about that issue for me. So it was.
Oh, dude, he's hugely popular. During the definitely during the heart of the whatever you want to call the pandemic debacle, he was the voice of anyone with sanity. He was the largest voice and most prestigious voice with sanity on the air, no doubt. If there is a tier of podcasts and Joe Rogan sits atop alone, right below him is this guy and some other guys. I mean, he's definitely, and it's cool that he used to be a lib and then he's had his shit unraveled, right?
I've had several of those people. It's really interesting that I've had sort of lefty folks, maybe more than even so the right, who have kind of reached out to me in this. There've been a lot more people, I think, on the left who probably got their eyes open, who were like, whoa, holy smokes. And so I find myself kind of talking to people I would normally have maybe been on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Although I'm certainly not on the right. I'm full collapsitarian, man. Bring it on. I can't wait till I want it all to burn to the ground.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't have any illusions that we're at the end of the empire, man. This is Rome circa Nero playing with the fiddle kind of thing. We're at the end of the empire, and we just you have to kind of come to grips with it. It's not, the politicians ruined us and they brought us to this end. It's no, our culture kind of collapsed, and this is there you go. Yep.
Become a libertarian for a few months until you realize the whole system is messed up. Then move on to anarchy, where you want to change the system. Shortly after that, become a collapsitarian and sit back and watch it while it all burns. What about the Constitution, Dale? As a document by itself, it's no good.
It was a great attempt at something, but I got to say this: it's really interesting. Only recently, I've been doing some reading. I went back to read some things on the Constitution and the founding of it and all that, and I have to say that the Anti-Federalists were correct. That I think the Anti-Federalists, who, there's those famous documents, and Hamilton was one of the authors, and so are some of the founding fathers, the Federalist Papers.
I don't. Tell me.
Yeah, the Federalist Papers were a series that were written, making arguments about whether there should be a strong federal government. Before we had the Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation, and the conception of the United States as an entity was that it was United States, and in fact, in the old, Madison J. Right. And the Anti-Federalists were headed up by a guy named Brutus, who used the pseudonym Brutus. And you should, hey Caleb, look up Anti-Federalists and Brutus. It's an amazing thing. All of a sudden, you read the complaints of the Anti-Federalists, who basically said, look, if you build a strong central government, you'll come to regret it. That you'll lose all the individual autonomy of the states, and what you'll have is elitist twats running things from Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Brutus was a pseudonym for one of the most forceful anti-federalist voices during the ratification debates over the Constitution. While scholars still debate the author of the Brutus essays, most believe they were written by New York anti-federalist Robert Yates. Yates was a New York state judge.
Yeah. If you go read the Anti-Federalists, they get no run. Nobody talks about them in civics. But if you read the Anti-Federalist stuff, it would be impossible to come to any other conclusion other than that the Anti-Federalist papers were 100% correct about what would eventually happen. If you had a stronger and stronger central government, you'd eventually wind up where we are now. And so I've come to, I spent my life, I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And then I had this epiphany recently. I was reading through all of this stuff, historical stuff, and I realized that a lot of the things that are wrong are baked into the system, and we got here not by accident.
Is what you're saying scary?
Scary? No, I'm not. Nothing's scary to me anymore.
What about, okay, because it sounds like it could be a little scary, right? You have kids in this world, you have people in this world,
yeah.
and you're saying that the society is going to collapse.
Yeah. Well, scary. I'll say I don't have that same sense for my children that I used to, because I can imagine that my mother and father, I was born in 1969, and you and I are pretty close. You were like 1971 or something.
1972, yeah.
So I can well imagine that, you have a recollection of the 1970s. And despite what kids now are like, oh my God, it's horrible and racism horrible. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys have no idea.
Right.
I just remember what, it was like in 1970. I went to, in 1976 or 7, the federal district court judge in Florida was trying to carry out Brown versus the Board of Education. So Brown v. Board of Education overturned Separate but Equal, which is a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. So the Supreme Court said, yep, you can't have segregated schools. Separate but equal is bullshit. Now we're going to have integrated schools, right? And that's Brown v. Board of Education. That decision actually came down in the 50s. And then it bounced around because the federal courts were like, okay, well, now what do I do? Heidi, 70s, remember the 70s, he was high as a kite. It's possible.
Not yet, Heidi. Not yet.
Not quite. That was the 80s, Heidi.
Yeah.
So what happened was eventually it bounced around, and then federal judges were told that the South and the North, everywhere kind of dragged its feet on integrating the schools, right? So the Supreme Court says segregated schools are bullshit. That's illegal. Separate but equal is not the law of the land. Constitution doesn't dictate that. So everybody's got to, we got to have integration. It's like, well, what does that mean? Because the reality is what no judges wanted to deal with is that we're segregated as much by, maybe even more so by class than we are by race. Those are just proxies, that we use. But I mean, I grew up, for example, I grew up right next to the Hartford Projects. My mother was an orphan who grew up in the Hartford Projects. There are broke white people living right alongside the broke black people in the inner cities, And so anyway, in 70,
lots of them.
Yeah, lots of them. And which brings up an interesting point, a little diversion here. Only on the Twitter victim stack can some kid who's the son of a orthodontist and a liposuction surgeon in Marin County, he can be 19 and get confused about his sexuality. And now on the Twitter victim stack, he's up here and I'm a piece of shit because I'm a white male, even though I grew up broke, joined the military, went to Afghanistan, but I've got white privilege, So only in the Twitter victim stack can you alter reality like that, because in the real world, where you fall. If it's true, if the current lefty paradigm that inner city blacks have it worse than anybody, if that's the worst of the worst, then you can judge what society really thinks about you based on where you sit relative to the inner city project kind of reality, right? And so I lived right next door, so I knew exactly what society thought of me, even though I was white. Well, anyway,
right.
So in 1977, most people won't remember this, and it's kind of a forgotten chapter. But
Star Wars.
Oh yeah, that's where I saw it, down in Florida. We were living there. I was living in Florida, and the schools had decided, a federal judge said, well, we got to integrate schools. And so this is when they started busing kids to different schools. And so me and my sister and about a dozen white kids who lived in this little apartment complex right on the edge of Winter Park in Orlando, they shipped us to bussed us in to Hungerford Elementary School, which had previously been a segregated all black school. And so they took I don't know, there might have been 15 of us total in the whole school, white kids, and sent us to an all black school. And so if you want to see what angry and unhappy looks like, and I was 7 at the time. I remember coming home and I tell my mom, I was like, these kids hate us. They hate us. And I was like, and I didn't know why. I wasn't mentally prepared for that. I didn't have the context. What did I know? I was 7 years old, right? So I didn't understand anything about, Brown v. Board. I just knew the black kids at school hated me and wanted to kill me. I was the only white kid in my whole class, 2nd grade. My sister had, there was another 2 kids. There was me and my older sister. She was 3 years older. And there was a boy and girl. She was closer to my age. And then he was similar to my sister's age. But that kid got sent home in an ambulance. I mean, they beat that kid mercilessly. And I used to, every day at recess, spend almost all of recess running. And I mean, I did nothing from the start of recess. When we got out the door, it was on.
Because the kids were picking on you.
Oh, they wanted to kill me. They were, I mean, they had a lot of hostility and anger, and perhaps justifiably so. But, it got taken out on me because I represented, I was a white guy. I was, maybe the first white kid a lot of them had seen ever.
Thomas Sowell has written about this quite a bit. He's the black economist over at the Hoover Institute. Yeah. And basically one of the things he was saying is that, and I only say the black because I think it's relevant to the conversation. It has nothing to do with his credentials. He basically said that, if I understand correctly, that they should have never forced the law. Once it went into play, they should have let everything be and let it slowly happen. He said, because who suffered the most from that were all the schools that had all the black students. Because, and he shows the statistics, soon as you brought in the white students, all the test scores across the board dropped in those black schools. And he did say, he shows that the highest test scores in the country at that time were coming from 2 all black high schools, beating out all the white high schools. And as soon as they brought in the white kids, it all got fucked up. So it was this, it was an idea. It was a thought. It was, once again, it was anti-science. Once again, it was hey, the predictive value of what's best for these kids is this, but we would rather have this because of our political ideology, and they fucking ruined everything.
Yeah, people would much rather have the sense of righteousness of to virtue signal. We didn't have that term back then. Than they would to actually have good outcomes. And I didn't realize Allison went to Jamaica, Queens. Hey, Allison, I see this. When I lived in New York City too, I went to all black high schools more than once in my life. And I tried to go to, I started out, I lived over in that same area, and my mom used to work in Jamaica, Queens, which is a predominantly black part of New York City in Queens. And I lived nearby. I was supposed to go to John Quincy Adams High School, and I went to try out for the football team my junior year. And I was one of maybe 10 white kids to try out for that football team. And they had the number 1 football team in the city. They were city champs from the year prior. And so I went to try out for that team in that high school. And my mom came by to pick me up from practice one day. Tryouts. This is before schools even started in like August of 85. And my mother shows up and she's like, oh my God, she goes, not this again. And she sent me all the way across the city to a magnet school, international baccalaureate school. And I used to have to drive into work with her in the morning, then catch the bus across all the way to get to Flushing, Queens, to go to Francis Lewis High School, because it had an international baccalaureate program, so I could justify going across the city. But she was basically like, I'm not doing this again. Like, I'm not going through you being in an all black school and what that entails, particularly in high school.
Basically, at the time, since you were just getting beat up,
just get in the dog shit beat out of you.
Kazavion Joyner, I went to a college in Cleveland. MS and the high schools were still, what's MS?
Mississippi, I believe.
Mississippi.
Missouri. Yeah.
Cleveland, Missouri. Okay. And the high schools,
Mississippi.
Yeah.
And the high schools were still segregated and forced to integrate in 2016.
Whew. Yeah.
I think Haley was bussed around. I think my wife was bussed around in LA.
Yeah. And what's famous about that is if you look back, the famous national images that come out of that are from South Boston High School. And of course, I later married into Southie, to the Irish, when they bust all the black kids in from Dorchester, and they bust them into South Boston, and they had the riots. And, the famous images in the Boston Globe are the high school kids at Southie, the Irish kids throwing rocks at the bus with the black kids coming over from Dorchester. And so, it's, terrible, but it happened in both directions.
Of course.
It's that kind of enmity is, it's kind of baked into us. And which is why after all of that, like I remember Al Sharpton from the 80s when he was, got a crowd whipped up and they killed some Jewish folks in New York. And that guy's been a fraud and a race baiting piece of shit my entire life. And yet now these guys all sit, Sharpton, a whole bunch of them, and they got a TV show. And so we're not here by accident. There's the race baiters and all that can't move on. And so we're like, no one's willing to just stand up and call bullshit on it, so it's it just keeps going and it keeps going. And, eventually it's going to break.
It is interesting when people like Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, Lil Wayne, Kanye do cool bullshit on the system.
Look at what happens to them. Look how they get treated.
But Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington survived it.
Yeah,
you've seen the interview, right, with Morgan Freeman just destroy Don Lemon? Yeah. Destroy Don Lemon. Yeah.
Yeah. And I by the way, those guys are heroes to me. Denzel's one of my favorite all-time actors. I think the guy's the shit, and he handles himself as a
won't even do sex scenes with women or kissing scenes with women because he's married. What a stud.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude is a straight up stud, And I'll tell you who was, the 80s were interesting to me in that the biggest cultural icons of the 80s were, in my life, like if you were a football player in high school, I don't care if you were white, black, if you played football in high school in the 80s, everybody's favorite player, everybody's idol was Walter Payton, soft-spoken black guy, number 34 for the Chicago Bears. And I was a Pats fan, but Walter Payton was the tits. We all loved Walter Payton. The biggest name in music and pop culture was Michael Jackson.
Correct.
Michael Jackson was moonwalking his way over, across. We
don't have anyone like that anymore.
Right. And then
Bill Cosby was also
yes, Bill Cosby was
huge. The whole country went silent when that show went on the air.
Yep.
Thursday nights, 8 p.m.
And And the other cultural icon of the 80s who dominated everything and who was beloved, and I loved him for one particular thing that happened, was Michael Jordan.
Right.
Who didn't want to be like
with no race talk back then, Dale?
Almost none. I mean, it was going on. It was here and there, but
I never heard in the 80s once, wow, this is a show about a black family.
Right.
It was just a Cosby Show. We just watched it. My whole everyone watched it. The whole country went silent 8 p.m. Thursday nights.
Yeah, it was as big as anything. And my favorite part of all of that was there was a political campaign, and this is why I think it's broken. We come back to the return to the issue of the anti-federalists and politics, is that national politics and a federal government means that they makes everything a national issue. You know, something happens in Podunk, North Carolina. Now it's a national issue because we got national politicians, and that's how they win these federalized elections. So Michael Jordan, there was a black candidate running for North Carolina senator against a white guy, and some black leaders, including Sharpton and others, wanted Jordan to come out and make some statements. I mean, Michael Jordan was God. He was the king of all, and just a word from him would move markets, And one of the greatest lines he ever had, he became famous for, maybe a little infamous, is he wouldn't commit. He's like, I'm not wading into politics. And he was like, and people were like, why? And straight as an arrow, Mike just looked at me and goes, hey man, white people buy shoes too. And I thought, like, wow,
I remember that.
I was like, I loved him for that, because here was an opportunity. People were intentionally trying to get Mike to stoke up racial divisions. And he kind of was like, from a businessman perspective, but he was like, hey man, you want me to hate on white people? Who do you think is buying all my shoes? And by the way, it's always struck me as this interesting kind of schizophrenic aspect to Snoop Dogg. So here's Snoop now doing commercials with Andy Samberg and, doing Corona commercials on the beach. I mean, he's got his own, strains of weed and all that stuff. I mean, he's legit businessman. I love him. God bless him. But how do you square that with his gangster kind of creds? You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing, right? And yet it's always struck me as interesting about the gangster, the gangster mentality is what is it seeking in the end, right? They're always flashing bling and bills and commercial success. And so baked into it is this idea at some point you're going to get kind of amalgamated, and yet you're somehow supposed to keep your street cred while being a businessman and all of that. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing that you can pull that off in America. I mean, I don't see anybody out there screaming that Snoop's a hypocrite,
Right. Well, rappers and fighters get some sort of, and comedians get some sort of pass, right?
Yeah.
If you're a rapper and you hit your girlfriend, it's you get a pass, maybe even a little credit. If you're a fighter and you hit your girlfriend, you get a pass and you get a little credit. If you're a comedian, you can't hit your girlfriend, but you can say some crazy shit, some fun shit. You can point to some truths that other people can't point to.
Yeah.
It's three interesting professions. When I was thinking about this while listening to your podcast with Bret, it's weird that people's morality is now being dictated by where they work. And it's scary that the U.S. So if you get a check from the U.S. government, now you kind of have to do everything your boss tells you.
Yeah.
Stand by. Sorry. Caller, hi.
Hi. Yes, this is Paula with Pre-Legal with DMS. Look, I know this is the last kind of call anybody wants to get, but on this account, we have received no dispute, no tax forgiveness of debt form has been issued, and no arrangement has been received.
I just got one question. Is your mom still mad at me for that? Is your mom still mad at me for? Excuse me, I'm talking.
Get this account resolved.
It's a scam. It's a scam call. It's just a robot talking. I so bad wish it would have been a person.
Oh,
I could have done some mom jokes on her. Damn it. I was like, we don't even have the live call-in number up. What is this?
I was like, what the?
What is going? Hey, I get this text. I get scam text all the time that this is the Watsonville courthouse. You missed your date, or this is Amazon. Someone has purchased. Please push this link and and log in.
They almost got me on one of those. No, it was a PayPal one. The PayPal one looked I was like, oh,
yes,
shit.
I get PayPal requests in my PayPal saying I need to pay shit.
Yeah, I was like, what? Yeah, that's funny.
So like Nike, for instance, if you don't get the injection, they fired you, right?
Ooh, yeah.
And then I was watching the thing with Bret Weinstein, and if you don't get the injection, the U.S. military fucks with you, fires you.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh wow, these people's jobs are dictating their moral authority, and it got me to start thinking. And I'll just go straight there too. Bret was insinuating, and so I have to just make up what he was insinuating. He was insinuating the entire podcast that this is what we're witnessing is a psyop to make the U.S. military unready for battle.
Yes, he kept going there, and I was trying to be. It's funny. It's like people. It's almost like people are like poke.
Yeah.
To see, I was like, how many times is this guy gonna poke me? And is he want me to say what I really like? Does he really want me to go there? Like, of course it's not an accident. I was like, of course you couldn't possibly believe that it was an accident. And I'll tell you what, I told him this. It's funny. I was thinking of this conversation when I was telling you earlier about, we had this conversation. I told him privately offline after the thing. And I go, he brought it up again. And I go, Bret, you can't poke me. I go, you want me to give you the truth, like unvarnished right now here, me and you, with F words and everything? I go, Bret, of course it's not an accident. I go, the people in power, and I won't even put it to a particular political party. I'll just say the uniparty, because I'm not sure there's much difference between Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi, if I'm being honest. But the people in power have dreamed about, and it's what everybody who holds political power dreams about. The crown jewel of the United States, what makes us a powerful nation, is its military. We, for better or for worse, our military is better than everybody else's. I don't mean to be, that's not chauvinistic. I'm just telling you, like, that's a fact based on my own experience. I'll give you an example. I was in off the coast of Bosnia in '95, right? And we had just done the I don't know if you remember, there was an Air Force pilot who was shot down over Bosnia.
Vaguely,
Scott O'Grady.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Vaguely. I was drinking a lot those days. That was high school. That was at 5 years out of high school.
They kind of loosely based it with Owen Wilson behind enemy lines. They made a movie about it. And the guy who was rescued, that was my squadron that rescued him. And then after that, we were still dicking around, because that's when the Bosnian war was going on. And we went into Albania, and its economy was collapsing and all that. And we're supposed to do these big exercises, right, to help bring our countries together. So we're doing an exercise, a NATO exercise with Albania. And we bring what we bring from an amphibious ready group, So I'm flying Cobras, and we got, 46s and Hueys and jets up in the air.
You're flying Cobras, meaning that's a helicopter.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we're doing this big exercise, and before we go out in the brief, they're like, hey, listen, you guys go out there, do this, but be cool. And this is what we were told. There we go. Because the Albanian military is spending like the last of its, like, it's costing them a lot of money. They can't afford. Yeah, there's Albania. That coastline, by the way, is some of the most beautiful coastline in the world. I've never seen coastline as beautiful as that right there, from Croatia all the way around. That's the Adriatic Sea right there on the right side of the boot of Italy. And that whole area, pristine beaches, just gorgeous. Unbelievable how beautiful it is. But the economies were just stripped by the governments there. And we were in Albania, and they were trying to do this exercise. So they put up their fighters or whatever. They could only put up, they were basically like, hey, listen, guys, they're going to have 2 of their jets fly by, and they can't stay. They can't hang around. They're just going to whip through the area. And we have to kind of make up for their absence, because that's all they can afford to do. They don't have enough. They don't have enough money to get fuel to keep their aircraft in the air. And so, and that's just one example, but like even the Soviets, Ukrainians, all these other militaries, nobody has the kind of military that we have. And because of that, if you're, the old power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, people who have power, politicians, they all have a boner to use the U.S. military on their enemies. I don't think there's a politician alive who wouldn't love to be able to turn to like a Marine amphibious unit and be like, destroy my enemies, like just, oh yes, they want that so bad. And you don't even have to, like, I'm not making that up. Look at Eric Swalwell's tweets. Look at Biden about, well, you can't stand up to the U.S. military. We got F-15s. I mean, he doesn't understand anything about war. He's a giant bullshitting knucklehead. But those guys all dream about having an excuse to use the military on their enemies. And all I'll tell you is, it's my opinion, based on everything I've seen, having gone through this 27, 30 years, whatever, in the military. What I see is politicians are just dying to be able to use the military to shut their enemies up.
Eric Swalwell, an American lawyer, politician, U.S. representative for California's 15th congressional district.
Yeah, he's probably your rep, man.
Yeah, Contra Costa County, north of me. Yeah, he's Craig Howard's rep.
Yep.
And what's his deal?
Oh, he slept with a Chinese spy, among other things.
Oh, that's the guy that slept with the Chinese spy?
Yes, and then he had all these tweets that were basically like, when people talk about the Second Amendment, he's always like, oh, eat shit, because we like he flies an F-15 or an F-16. But you'll hear politicians talk, right, David, weed, war is money. That's all it is, buddy. The merchants of death never let go. Yes, Swalwell is also the guy who broke a little ass.
What, he farted during an interview?
Yeah, that was great. That was kind of funny.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm not going to hold it against you, Sammy. So to Brett's question, yes, that's what I believe is going on. You want people to leave, to get people to disobey. Let me give you an analogy to this. Let me say another controversial thing. You'll love this.
Okay, hold that thought. Just so there's two things here that possibly are coming up. One, we're going to test them with this vaccine, and it's only the ones who will obey will stay. Or two, we're trying to make the military so unready. And as some of the things you were saying in that interview, like we had the largest, I don't know, a few months ago, we had more people leave the military than any other month in the history of the United States, except for like the month after Vietnam.
Right.
And it's oh shit.
Yeah, we lost the equivalent. Somebody, I think it was John Bose, had done the numbers, but we're going to lose like 90,000 or something. He was like, we haven't lost that many people since like the Battle of the Bulge or some shit. Like
and so which one are you saying is the plan? To keep the brainwashed guys in who will do anything to keep their paycheck, or to make us unready?
Both.
Because
those aren't mutually exclusive propositions. That's not an excluded middle. You want a military that's less effective, but less effective in what sense? What do you mean by less effective? Like, it's not like they're going to get different. They're changing out aircraft. What they want is people they can control, and what they want to really do is use the military in posse comitatus, which is an act that prevents the military from being used ever domestically in a law enforcement capacity. And so now comes the Insurrection Act, and now you see the National Guard around the election and all of that. I mean, all the optics on it are not good.
I want to put some perspective for you guys. Dale represents anywhere between 900 and 1,000 military members, and that would be the world's 16th largest air force.
Yeah, something like that.
If his clients were to form an air force, shitloads of his clients are pilots. And in that Bret Weinstein interview, one of the things that you will hear is that the U.S. military is short like 1,200 or 1,300 pilots, which is, I mean, to use Bret's words, it's terrifying. And Bret also said this. He said, we're going through a spasm of totalitarianism. God, but it sounds like it's going to be more than a spasm.
Yeah, for sure.
So what were you going to say before I interrupted you? I just wanted to put some perspective on that.
Only this, that the people in power would love to be able to, for example, how would you like to see your elections? It wouldn't surprise me. Let's put it this way. It won't surprise me. I'll make a prediction that in 2024's presidential election, you'll hear politicians asking to use the military or the National Guard around election sites. Right. I'll make that prediction right now. Book it. That
hasn't happened every year since 1925.
Nope. No. Nobody. The optics on, hey, let's have the military hanging around ballot boxes. The optics on that aren't great.
Kazavion Joiner, I have a lifelong medical complications now from the jab. I'm getting med boarded. What does that mean? Med boarded?
They're gonna Yeah, bored. Well, God, Caleb, you can chime in.
They just look at all of his records and then they determine his like disability and then they kick him out of the military if they deem it necessary. They look at his readiness, like see if he can still do his job properly or he's like not worth keeping around essentially.
Yeah. And he'll be fighting for the rest of his life to get, 15 cents on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
From the government for his service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know who called in the other day? Who's fucked up? Dale is. Do you remember Michael McCoy, the filmmaker for CrossFit? Yeah, he said he's all fucked up from getting the injection.
Oh well, I hate to be mercenary, but I certainly would love to hear from him because that sounds like a client to me. Speaking of which, by the way, on this issue, I've been working with Brandon Johnson defending the Republic and another guy named Andy Meyer, who's a longtime class action lawyer down in Florida. And all I can say at this point is that we think we may have found a business model to continue to sue the government. So don't be surprised if you see coming lawsuits against bad actors. But I've got my teeth into this now. I ain't letting go. But more importantly, I think there's a business model here where we can do this and get damages and money back. So working on that right now.
For those of you, I don't mean to make you blush, Dale, but one of the most honest, transparent, articulate, wisest, friendly, caring badasses I've ever met in my life is you're staring at him, Dale Saran. I don't know anyone who recreationally goes as hard as Dale in anything. I mean, the shit that he's done, I don't think most CrossFit Games athletes would dare to put their toes into. And yet he has managed to keep this huge Jew brain of his intact. And he is extremely
hey, remember when I was fighting
capable.
in armor?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I remember I used to look at your weapons. You'd have them like, we'd go to the trunk of your car and I'd see your weapons. I'm like, what the fuck? I
don't remember. Greg's such a hard guy, but Greg was like, Dave was all for it. Dave was like, hey, we're going to do this at the games. This is great. He loved it. And Greg, I remember after the games, after that big thing when we fought in front of that massive crowd, that was the largest tournament of armed combat since, there you go. That was the largest crowd.
The one you did at the game was the largest crowd ever?
Since the Tournament of the Roses in like the 13th century. Nobody's seen tournament combat like that since the Tournament of the Roses. I think it was like 1350 or something. So that was the largest gathering of people to watch that ever. But afterwards, Greg saw the video and he was like trying to be like,
I remember Greg, he wanted you to quit so bad.
Yes, he wanted me to quit so bad, but he didn't want to say, you cannot do that. He didn't want to, because he didn't want to drop the hammer on me. I remember he said to me one day, we're just sitting around at the house when we were all living together. And he came in and goes, he just looked at me out of the blue and was like, hey brother, I don't want to say anything, but somebody's going to wind up with some brain trauma out of that. I'm just telling you, that's not going to end well. And somebody's going to wind up with their.
And let me tell you something about Greg too. In that regard, Greg's not the kind of person to interfere in anyone's life. Like if you were smoking a cigarette next to Greg, he wouldn't tell you that's going to kill you. No. He really would mind his own business in regards to that. But with Dale playing with those hammers and hitting dudes in the head and in the back as hard as they can, he did not like that at all.
No, he was like, his lawyer, he's like, I'm not too keen on my lawyer getting his head stoked in.
Allison, they try to kill each other.
Yeah.
It's
Allison, check out, there's a series you can watch. I was in episode 5 called Night Fight. It had on the History Channel. You got to buy it. It had an 8-episode run, and I'm in, I think, 8 episodes, and I'm in episode 5 fighting other dudes in armor. And you'll see if you watch it. It is not, there's no fake. It isn't WWE.
Did girls do that? Did girls do that?
Yeah, we had some. Yeah, there it is. Night Fight. We had female fighters too. Yep. In fact, the first overseas tournament I fought in, right, we had a women's team and they fought the other women. And we had one gal in particular who was awesome. She was the axe champ of the world. She was tough. Sister of a guy I fought with. And one of the gals was like, at the end of the day, they allow you to do these melees. They call them all on alls. And so anybody who wants to fight comes to the list and you go inside, and we did like 28 versus 28. And we snuck a chick out there. And so several of us were like, hey,
Wow.
you know, we kind of kept her nearby, but she wanted to see what it was like to be an actual, like, to do it, man, to do the deed, you know, in, you know, 28 versus 28 armed combat melee, you know, and there's variations on it. We got her in there and she was so juiced afterwards. I mean, she got knocked in her ass, but I was nearby her and it wasn't nothing too bad, you know, but gave her a chance to get in there and fight with the boys, you know, and yeah, good on her. Good on her.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did anyone ever find out?
No, but you know who else we stuck in armor? Ask Jay Vera about it.
You did?
Oh yeah.
Did Jay Vera go out there and fight?
Yeah. Yes. Jay had been following us with a camera, you know, and he eventually.
Jay Vera's a filmmaker at CrossFit. He's still with CrossFit. He might be the only. I'm trying to think if they have anyone. The media team was 100 people. He might be the only creative still working at CrossFit. Yeah, what a shit show their media team is. What a fucking utter joke. It's fucking pathetic. It's fucking.
Whoops. Did I hit a sword?
No, it's just it's so bad and it could be fixed in 24 hours. But it's so. Anyway, sorry, go on. So Jay Vera.
So Jay Vera had been filming us and following us, right? Because those guys, some of the guys have been training at whose gym? Jason Khalipa's gym. So Jason Khalipa had let us use the back of his gym. That he had a whole bunch of space, and so we had done some tournaments back there. And he was like, "This is insane." And so Jay had been following all these guys who were doing CrossFit. We tried to get some of these guys because a lot of guys were fat. We tried to get them in shape. And so Jay followed us, and we went all the way to the World Championships. And while we were there, Jay was around, and then we snuck Jay into armor for an all v all. We didn't tell the captain of the team or anything. We didn't tell anybody. We got Jay into armor because once you're in the armor, you know, you don't know who it is. You can't see. The guy's got a helm on. You can't. And Allison, to your question, how heavy is the armor? It runs between about 60 pounds and maybe 85 on the high end. You know, it depends on what you're using. A lot of guys, you want lighter, obviously, is better, but it's about 60 pounds worth of shit once it's on. And
I've never even done Murph with the vest.
So we stuck.
That one would collapse.
I tell you, Jay was in really good shape at the time, right?
Oh, he's still in great shape. He's a beast.
Yeah, he's a stud. And he was CrossFit hard at the time. And so he was like, all right, let me get in this, right? And he was watching a lot of these fat guys, and he was like, I'm going to house these guys. But the thing that nobody understands about armor, particularly wearing a helmet, you've got the demands of the helmet so that your face doesn't get caved in are such that, it's padded. It is padded so you don't get concussed. You've got these foam pads on the inside of a metal.
Hey, dude, don't let Dale tell you any of this shit. I'm telling you, they have swords and axes. They have fucking 40-pound axes they swing at each other full throttle. No. And like you'll swing and miss, and a dude will hit you with a fucking 30-pound hammer in the fucking head. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. You can get concussed. You absolutely can.
No, you are going to get concussed.
Yeah, that's one of those was me. Yeah.
It's nothing like it is in the movies. It is fucking horrible. Look at, did you see that guy swing that axe? Look at him.
Oh yeah.
There's no toys out there. There's no toys.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, that was me just getting dressed. So the helmets my helmet weighed about almost 20 pounds. My helmet would deflect a 22 round. If you fired a bullet at my helmet, it would ricochet off. But yeah, it's kind of
someone brought their kid there.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, we have our kids there, families, wives. I got a great one for you, Sev. Right? So my first tournament.
I want to go back to the Jay story, but go ahead, tell this one, and then I won't forget.
I'll finish this. Jay gets into this is it. Jay gets into armor, and
don't get us canceled, Caleb. No more than 7 seconds. Okay.
All right.
So Jay gets into armor. We get him out there, right? And what he doesn't realize is that fighting in armor is a lot like, it's like scuba diving in the sense that you really want to control your breathing, because if you start breathing in and out really fast inside your helm, you do not clear all of the CO2. So you're like this, right? You're like, and now you're breathing back in. You're not getting 100% oxygen unless that's why we always would love windy days. You'd like a windy day. You want a steady breeze because it clears the shitty CO2 and you can get clean oxygen. But most days aren't like that. It's hot
or indoor fighting. That was indoor fighting.
And you're breathing, and you're breathing in your own CO2, so you're slowly suffocating. And you can feel yourself start to do it. And so a lot of guys who haven't worn a helm before, they're like, yeah, I'm going to get in there, somebody fighting, right? And they're like, and they start grappling, and they're like, and then all of a sudden they start going, oh shit, I'm fucking drowning. It feels like you're being waterboarded. And so you slowly, and so you'll see guys at the end of a fight clawing at throwing their gauntlets down and trying to get their chin strap off and trying to rip their helmet off so they can get there because they're suffocating slowly. It's a really disconcerting feeling if you haven't done it before. So we got Jay out there, and he goes out there like, I'm badass, I'm fit, and thinking like it's like a CrossFit workout where you can just breathe freely. And at the end of the first match, I mean, he did okay. But at the end of the first match, he's running for the gate, trying to peel his helm off, and he's like clawing at his head. And we're like, Jay, calm down, and it's like you can't breathe. And so people start to panic and shit. It was funny. He got his helmet off, and he was like, I didn't realize. We were like, well, yeah, that's the deal. Yeah, there I am.
How much are one of those suits?
I dropped I had a pretty basic kit, and I dropped like $5,000 to get the kit, like my first kit. But eventually, I mean, I probably spent 10 to 20 grand on armor, weapons, travel. Yeah, there I am right there. I think right dead center. That's me.
Did you sell all your stuff when you got out of it?
I gave it away. Yeah, I gave it away to some of the guys, to the team.
Oh shit, you're a good dude.
Weapons, everything, all my armor, my kit, medals, all that shit. I gave it all.
What would you rather see, your kid come home with one of those or a motorcycle? You're like, shit.
Ooh, motorcycle.
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Hey, anyone ever die doing that?
Yeah, but not from that. Guy died of a heart attack in the 29. The first guys who did this who went overseas and fought the Russians, the Belarusians, Eastern Europeans. This is huge, and they're the best in the world because they're the most vicious. Large.
Right.
Yeah, but we did really well. The U.S. I mean, the U.S. as a team, we cleaned up. Yeah.
So these going back to these clients of yours, when does this case end? What's an ideal ending for this thing?
It's interesting you bring that up. So we're waiting. We're just sitting right now, and it's tough because I got people getting kicked out. My Coast Guard folks are getting just slaughtered. They're throwing them out left, right, and sideways, even though we've got a motion pending, and it's clear their First Amendment rights have been violated. They filed for a religious accommodation, and back to the point about the military, it's not an accident that they're kicking out the religious.
Oh.
You asked about that issue. Think about
that's the big picture that people don't understand. Those of you who aren't religious like me, you have to understand the nuance here. But I want to go back a second. First of all, we weren't clear, Dale represents gang load of people, let's say 1,000 people, just to make it easy,
yes,
who basically are in conflict with the U.S. military about whether they want about the injection. They don't want to take the injection.
Yep.
And so what Dale here is alluding to is they're kicking out the people who put up religious, who are putting in religious exemptions.
Yep.
And that there is a deep, profound underlying concern there that goes beyond, hey, you're violating the Constitution.
Right. It's you're chopping the military of those who believe in something higher, that there are higher principles that you serve, that there are things that are more important beyond this. You don't want an atheist military. I mean that I mean that I'm deadly serious about that. The Nazi war machine was, that was an atheist military.
They have no brakes. It's just, they're just killing dogs.
Yep.
Even if there is no God, you want people who think there is a God so that they have some brakes. They have some higher moral authority to answer to. Yeah. It's a conscious check and balance.
Yep. And
they want to root that from this thing, which would make it, whether they want to or not, I guess isn't the point. If they root that from here, you've rooted the brakes. You've rooted any civility.
Yeah. You'll wind up with total war. You wind up with something more akin to World War II. And that's, the interesting thing, to bring it back to Bret, we started this talking about Bret. He had that same concern. He's, I think, a scientist, but he also recognizes that it's an important thing here that you've got people who have religious objections to this shot and are saying, who are raising their hands. And then what the military did was set up a system. Basically, they called it religious accommodation, but fundamentally what it was religious targeting. If you raised your hand and said, hey, I don't want to take this, you didn't get a break. They didn't go, oh, okay, well, we'll accommodate you. You know, that's what our religious accommodation policy says. Even though that's what all the policies say, what it did was anybody who tried to use that system, they immediately removed them from leadership positions, no promotions. I mean, Caleb, you know, could tell you this. Anybody who would speak out, any CO, like I got a client who's been on Fox News, a guy named Scott Duncan, Sonny Duncan. He started out as an F-18 pilot in the Marine Corps. And then he was a top graduate out of Top Gun, Navy, Marine Corps. He was the guy all the way through, became an F-35 pilot, selected to be a squadron commander, devout religious guy. And he got selected for command, going to command a squadron of F-35Bs. And when the shots were coming down the pike, he's a very religious guy. Everybody knew, well, you know, he's probably not going to take this. And so as soon as they, F-35B guy. And as soon as the thing came out and he said, yeah, I'm a Christian and, you know, I'm not taking this, they pulled his command. So he doesn't get to command.
Wow.
And that's a guy.
What does that mean? He doesn't get to command, Dale? He doesn't get to fly?
Yeah, they don't let him fly. They stopped him. All the guys, the first thing they do, I told all my pilots, I go, listen, I hate to say this. I go, but they're going to go after what you love. And so every one of the pilots, the first thing they do is they ground them. They take away flying.
Say that again, Caleb. What did you say?
They just denif them until oblivion. It's like the do not fly list. You're just stuck on that list. Basically, it's like a profile where you're not deemed medically safe to fly. Because the flyers have like,
even though they're wearing oxygen,
right.
they're on their own oxygen in the plane. Can't possibly harm anybody.
That one client of yours was saying, hey, dude, I sit in a plane by myself. I don't even have a co-pilot. I'm in a plane by myself with a mask on, fucking 10,000 feet in the air, and I'm a threat to someone?
Yeah.
I can't imagine how many times a pilot's been like just a little sick and they've still flown. Like they just, like, it's not, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Fixed wing guys have to be much more careful about it. Helo guys, no, we could take like Afrin and stuff and get in the cockpit. But if you're going up to altitude, you got to be careful because you can't, flight physiology, human physiology gets different up at 35,000 feet, you know, where those guys go. And so you got to be real careful. Most fixed wing pilots I know always carried a bottle of nasal spray. They're not supposed to, but if you get a nasal block up at altitude and you're trying to come back down, you can have real problems. And so most guys you're not supposed to. Nasal spray. Somebody asked, Tyler Spill asked, what's Afrin? It's nasal spray.
Oh, it's like crap. You should try it whenever you're sick.
Any NSCA case updates. That's funny. Hey, Tyler, CrossFit settled and they wouldn't disclose what the settlement was.
I'll tell you what I heard, Tyler. I'll tell you what I heard. I heard that the settlement was so massive that they didn't want to tell anyone because they're afraid the affiliates would get upset. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true.
Oh, interesting.
But that's what I heard. But that being said, for those of you who don't know, Dale and Greg and Sorts basically were protecting the affiliates from a malicious study that was easily proved to be malicious to attack all the affiliates, to attack every one of you. They lied, and the lying was like just right up front.
Yep.
Like basically they had the editor of whatever that sports journal it came from saying, hey, you need to put injuries in here. Even though you didn't find any, you need to put injuries in here. And Greg and Dale got a hold of that and they sued these fucking guys, and these guys wanted to fucking settle. And Dale and Greg said, no, we're not settling. And the metaphor that Greg always used was in the cowboy movies, when you tie the rope around the guy's feet and you drag him around the town, there's no destination. You're just dragging him around to fucking show everyone the bad guy and to kill him. Greg had no interest in settling the case.
Yep.
They offered him so much fucking money. And he's like, nope, you attack my affiliates, you cannot exist basically on planet Earth when you and get in the way of these affiliates from deploying the cure to the world's most vexing problem and these small businesses, because Greg had met thousands of these owners and he knew they were trying to put food on their tables. And the second he sold the company, I would say within a year, whoever was in leadership, what'd you say, Dale?
I was less than that. I was shocked to hear that. That's what my take. And again, I wasn't part of all that. I was gone by then, so I don't have any insider info, but I'll just say that when I heard that they settled, it changed my view of the sale. It made everything for me was like that settlement came not long after the sale. And it just looked to me like that was what the sale was about, but I don't know.
So here's what Dale is saying. And Dale, correct me if I'm wrong. If I own a ranch and my neighbor has a ranch next door and he has so many flies on his ranch that it's causing me $3 million worth of effort to clean up the flies on my property a year, and it's shooing off all the tourists, but I can buy that ranch for $1 million. I've now up $2 million. Basically, if I can get rid of my neighbor who's doing $3 million damage a year to me for $1 million and get his shit, why wouldn't I just buy it?
Right.
And so there is a thought that's a very valid mathematical thought that there was so much disruption coming from CrossFit Inc. and the affiliates in other people's business models, pharma, Coca-Cola, sugar drinks, etc., that CrossFit Inc. was purchased. And so to put this in perspective, Gatorade spends $300 million a year on billboards alone. And I'm using billboards as a metaphor for advertising. I don't know exactly where it goes, but just think about that. And so if you could buy CrossFit Inc. for $300 million, like it's just advertising dollars.
Right.
And then shut them up, take control of it, and have CrossFit say, oh, you can exercise away Gatorade. And then obviously the year that it's sold, in comes Monster Energy. So that's where the theory comes from. I don't know if I buy it, but mathematically the algebra is like, there's no kinks. There's no like, well, what about that number dangling? There are none. It's a perfect match.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like.
And right, diabetes is exhibit B. That's a good one. Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, very good, Tyler. He sees, he knows. Yeah, and to that end, I'll just say that, it doesn't, I mean, are these things all tied together? I don't know, but it just seems odd to me that the first thing that people came when the pandemic, when the scamdemic, plandemic, whatever you want to call it, when that happened, it was amazing to me that among the first places that they said they would shut down were gyms.
Insane.
I mean, of all the places, it's like right up front, the earliest thing was like, hey, the best defense to any of this would be to be fit, healthy, because fit, healthy people were basically at zero risk, less than zero risk. I mean, if you were a fit, healthy person during the pandemic, your risk was nil. I mean, you were at a greater risk of getting hit by a car crossing the street than you were of catching COVID and dying during all of this. And then, so it seemed strange to me that like weed stores could stay open. Not that I'm, against weed, God knows, but still, it was odd to me that liquor stores and weed stores were deemed essential and gyms were deemed non-essential during a health crisis. And of course, the answer, I wrote an essay about this, and it got probably besides my mom, there might be 10 people who read it, but I had said, essential is really an interesting word because it implies that there's something else out there. In other words, if you're like, these workers are deemed essential workers, the first question that has to go through your mind is essential to what? Right. Like what essential to what's the essential? What's the thing that this is essential to? When you say something's essential, implicit in the definition of essential means that it
has to point to something.
It's a necessary part of something else. So what is it that it's necessary for? And you could never get, all you heard was government, governors and all these people who are locking down their, the economy, collapsing businesses. And they kept saying, well, they're essential businesses, essential. And I would always go, essential to what? What are they essential to? And you could, no one, never, so far as I'm aware, no one, not a single reporter, no one ever asked the question, essential to what? And it's when I see stuff like that, Sev, that I come back to the point about it's collapsing. You couldn't have pulled the scamdemic with a numerate populace, because anybody who can understand numbers would have, couldn't help but look from early on and be like, oh, this is all bullshit. You can't be familiar with numbers and not appreciate that this was all bullshit. But
Baskin Robbins stayed open near my house the entire 2 years.
right. Of course. You can't go without ice cream, Seth. I mean, what are you going to do with no cookie-o?
It was crazy.
Yeah. And gyms and businesses, small businesses destroyed, restaurants destroyed. The only things, fundamentally what we did was we cratered the underlying engine of our economy, which is small business.
What do you have any thoughts on homeschooling?
Oh, baby. Yeah. More of it. Listen, if I were the emperor, the only question would be whether, before I chained the doors on the Department of Education and burned it to the ground, the only question would be how much notice I would give, if any, to the people that work there. That's the only question. Would be,
so
would
you
I
have some
tell them
strong
15,
opinions. Tell me why.
Would it be 15 minutes that I would give them to get out of the building before I burned it to the ground? Or would I just burn it to the ground and not care about everybody in there? In a just society, in an honor society, imagine that if the shogunate of the Tokugawa shogunate had, the shogun in Japan had decided to have a Department of Education, and it did the same thing that the U.S. Department of Education did in its first 3 years. No chance that guy wouldn't have had to commit suicide after year 3.
Tell me, explain why.
Well, because if you take a graph, right, and you go a little x-axis, y-axis, and you graph along the x, you graph time, and across the top, you graph money spent, tax dollars spent on the Department of Education. It only goes one direction. It only goes up. We've only spent more money every year. We've never let's maybe retrench and come back on that. It only goes one direction, up. Spend more money since the Department of Ed was founded. And not coincidentally, test scores. If you took the same graph, and you can find this image, and you graph test scores since the Department of Ed in the US over time, it only goes one direction. And it ain't up. It goes, it goes down. So you're spending more and more money, and you're getting worse and worse test scores by the Department of Education. And I'm just saying that if you were like Japanese in an honor culture and you worked for the shogun and you were the head of the Department of Education, 3 years in, if test scores had gone only down and money spent had only gone up, you'd have to kill yourself publicly. That's the only way your family could show its face. You know what I mean? You'd be obligated to commit seppuku. You'd have to.
Oh, you're good, Caleb.
Similar, but
yeah, same idea.
Just...
There you go. Look at how much we're spending now. Look at what we're getting for test scores.
And that was only at 2003.
Look at that.
It's pretty bad.
What's MAEP test scores? They look like they're going up. Oh no, that's the spending. Oh,
there you go, Sev. Got to be that blue line is money. That's money.
That's dollars spent per student.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how you do it, whether you do total dollars, dollars per student. It doesn't matter how you do the measure. It only goes up.
Hey, you know what's crazy too is it says in 2000. So my homeschooling, in my area, they give us like $3,900 a year for 3 kids, but they get to spend in 2000, whatever that was, 8. They were already spending $11,000 per kid. They should give me the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
If they're spending $40,000 per kid, they should give me $120,000 a year. I'll make sure my kids are good.
Yeah. The money should follow the student if we're going to be, but no, I think the whole thing is education. Look, all the assumptions that underlie the need for an education system are gone. They've all changed. So in the frontier days, they would say well, we need, you need education because you need an educated populace in order to understand issues. And that's how you have, and 1837, what's his face, de Tocqueville writes his great Democracy in America, volumes 1 and 2 that nobody's read and everybody quotes and gets wrong. But he said that it was the educated populace, right? And so it had this impetus, Horace Mann, the 1840s, we've got to have public education. We've got to educate the next generation, blah, blah, blah. It's all just government propaganda. You have publicly funded education, government education, and what you'll get is government education. You know, I mean, I don't know how else to put that. Let's put it this way. Publicly funded education is, I think the word public there has the same meaning that it does the same thing as an adjective that it does to restroom. So public is to education as public is to restroom, or public is to servant.
You mean it's for everyone?
No, I just think about this. What's the bathroom in your house like? It's probably clean.
Clean, nice. Yeah.
Because you don't want to go into
leave it better than when you went in.
Right. Okay. So how do public restrooms?
They don't even fucking put doors on them. They treat it, they're fucking idiots. I was just in Newport Beach, one of the richest communities in the world. Their public restroom there on the beach doesn't have doors. I would beat the fuck out of someone if they like if you have daughters and you go somewhere and they don't have doors on the public restrooms, you should go up to the city council members and bitch slap them. Like really? Yeah. Or make them all shit in there while we all watch. and their moms and their daughters and their sisters. Yeah, what do you think? It's crazy.
Hey, the first time in the military at OCS, and boot camp, in the military, Marine Corps, no doors on the stalls.
I'm okay with that. It's a bunch of 19-year-old dudes. Suck it up. Yeah,
the first time you have that experience, man, when you're there, like, and you're on the clock, and your drill instructor screaming. The first time he comes in front of you, and you're like, what? I'm there trying to wipe, and this dude's like, get off. You will get off now.
Yeah.
It's just the most horrifying thing. You're like,
you eventually accept it though, right? Eventually you can shit anywhere like a dog, right?
Oh, yeah. Hey, the other one that was traumatic. The other one that was traumatic, right? I'm in line 7. I'm a new pilot. I'm at 29 Palms, California in 94. I remember this. And they go, one of the guys is like, hey man, let's hurry up. We'll get over to the bathroom now because the lines at Camp Wilson are bad for the heads, the bathrooms, right? So I'm like, all right, so we get in this long line, everybody's waiting. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And so some people in the comments anybody who's been to CACs, combined arms exercises in 29 Palms will know this, will back me up. So I get in line, I'm a first lieutenant, I'm like 23 years old, 24 maybe. And I get in line, and as I come around, I'm in the building, and you kind of turn, the line snaking, and I'm like, where are the shitters? I'm kind of looking around, right? As I come around the corner, I kind of get a peek around this wall, and I look, and what I can see is that there are no doors, there are no stalls, there's nothing, there's no walls. It's just like 12 shitters, and it's like 6 on one side, and
like an art installation, like not even a real bathroom, like an art installation.
And there's 6, and they're just in this open area, right? And it's like 6 on the side. So you're sitting staggered from the people. So you're not directly across from the guy in front of you, but it's like,
and there's women and men all using the same. Just dudes. Okay.
Yeah, just dudes.
How nice of them to stagger.
Yeah. But so the guy next to you is just outside of you. Like if you extended your knees out, if you like opened your legs, you'd bump the knees of the guy next to you, right?
That's next level. I'm really comfortable. Right. I don't really want to touch anyone when I have all my shit out. Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
So I'm right. I see this, and I'm like, and my face must have given it away, right? Because I'm like, and I'm trying to just be, oh my God. And now I'm like, how am I going to do this? Because like when my bowel is ready to evacuate, man, it's an event. Like, the family needs to leave, get out of the house, get the kids off the streets, man. It's going to be bad, right? And so I see this. And so this old crusty sergeant, he's got to be in his 30s or 40s. I don't know, but he's this old like master sergeant or something, right? And he must have seen the look on my face. And he's walking toward me, and he's got a paper under his arm, right?
Like he's going to sit there and read it while he shits?
He's got a newspaper under his arm. He's coming out. And I'm going in, right? And he must have seen the look on my face, the horror. And so he's got the newspaper under his arm, right? And he leans over and he slaps me in the chest with the newspaper, puts it in my chest. And he leans in my ear and he goes, hey, sir, it's a little bit if you hide behind the paper. And then he just keeps on rolling, man. And I'm just like, that's one of the great acts of kindness that anyone's ever done. Like one of the nicest things, like just, he gave me the paper, right? And now I'm like, now you can kind of pretend like while you're sitting there, you just hide behind it while you're like, you know, and just your body's making all these
It's
noises.
like the ostrich effect, right? Everyone can still see you, but you have your head in the ground, so you're like, fuck it.
Right. You're just telling yourself, like, it's all good. This is legit. This is fine. You know,
No one can see me.
Right. I'm hidden behind the paper. Nobody can see it. I mean, it was just, yeah, that was pretty horrible.
Is the toilet paper just sitting on the ground?
Yeah.
And you pick up a roll?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Dale, your listeners definitely needed that one. That was
Dale. How many years did you fly helicopters?
5 total.
And in what helicopter did you just fly? One helicopter or a variety of them?
Well, you start out learning. So I learned on the Bell Jet Ranger, the Bell 206, 2 different models of that in flight school, and then got out to the fleet, learned to fly Cobras. And then when I got to my squadron, I was in a 2 aircraft squadron, Hueys and Cobras. So the old UH-1 Novembers. Yeah. Yep. Bell 206 right there.
So is that like what the news organizations use and shit?
Yes. Yep. A lot of them do, for sure. It's probably the most used. I think it's the most used helicopter in the world. Great aircraft. It's the safest single engine aircraft in the world, even more so than a plane.
Wow.
Yep. Safest single engine aircraft in the world right there, the Bell 206 Jet Ranger.
And does that have a propeller in the back too?
Yep. Tail rotor. Sure does.
It's the same motor that runs both of those? It's the same motor that runs both of them?
Yep. They're connected through a drivetrain, through that tail, right through that tail boom right there is a shaft that spins the tail rotor there. Right. Bingo. And that spins the tail rotor, and it's connected to the main rotor. And what happens is, they're a little squirrely, because anytime you do one thing, like you touch a rudder pedal or you pull up the collective or whatever, it affects everything else because they're all connected. What happens is if you lose your engine, there's a clutch. It's called a Sprag clutch, and it lets go so that the propeller can freewheel through the air if you have an engine failure. So the engine decouples from the drivetrain, and that's how you auto rotate. You fall out of the sky, it generates lift up through air up through the rotor head that spins it, and then you kind of save all that energy for right at the bottom when you have no engine, and then you just pull and land it and grease them out. We used to do full autos to the ground in those things, like it was cool.
Wait a second.
Oh my God, dude.
Engines off. Engines off, baby. All the way to the ground.
Wait a second. You're telling me that the engine can stop on that, and there's a way to disengage the engine from the propeller so the engine's not slowing the propeller down?
Yeah, it happens automatically. It senses that.
Oh.
The Sprag clutch lets go, and now it's freewheeling. You can feel
How close do you have to be to landing when you do that? Like only 20 feet off the ground?
Oh, no. You do it in all these different regimes, but there's something called the height velocity diagram. We call it the dead man's curve. You want to be on the right side of the dead man's curve. If you're on the wrong side of the dead man's curve, there's a reason it's called the dead man's curve.
So someone's landed one of these, like being 1,000 feet off the ground with no engine?
Oh, yeah. Better. Higher is better. You even know it from the chart. You can see what the best altitude. Like I can tell you, I don't know. You still have these things buried in your head. But the Cobra, you can safely auto the Cobra. I wish I could show you the diagram. It's it's a curve. It's there it is. Bingo. Height velocity diagram. Right there.
Shit. Good job, Caleb.
Look at you. The dead man's curve. Yep, right there. So you see all that blacked in area?
Yeah.
Between 400 feet and 0 feet, you want airspeed first. And so what you do is you fly in that area. Caleb, can you highlight the white area space right there?
So that avoid operation that's the white area. That's where you want to be.
So right, you want to be in the white. See what it says? Avoid operation in the shaded area. If you're in the shaded area, for example, if you're at 0 knots, if you're at a hover at 150 feet, that's a bad place to be.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where I was when I crashed. I was at 150-foot hover, and when we lost both engines.
And the best place you want to be is 200 feet at 150 knots.
Yeah, 200 feet, 50 knots. 200 feet, 60 knots. Right. Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Wow. Oh, they got a typo in there, I think. Oh no, it goes okay. Oh, and you also don't want to be. Oh shit, you don't want to be at 15 feet going 50 knots either.
Nope.
You crashed a Cobra? Uh-oh, did Dale freeze? I think we lost Dale.
So.
Right at the good part. Did he say he crashed a Cobra? Did he say he was at 200 feet and the Cobra went down?
Yeah, it looked like he was at 200 feet at 40 knots.
Okay, so can you pull that crap back up? Dale, you were in a Cobra that stopped operating at 200 feet?
100. I was at about 150 feet, maybe 125 feet when both engines and 0 knots. I was on a hover.
And what
0,
happened?
right there.
Did you get malfunction or attack?
Malfunction during an exercise. Yeah, that was the crash I survived. August 11th of 94.
And were you the pilot?
I was, well, there were 2 pilots. I was in the front and there was a guy in the back. I was calling in artillery. We were doing an exercise. And the guy in the back was a guy named Bill Dunn. And
did he survive?
Yeah, we both lived.
Holy shit.
Yep. One of those, right? The whiskey Cobra right there. That was my guy. Yep.
Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, we just we had a rollback of one engine and it was really hot. We were in the desert. It was hot day. So we, started to sink. And then the other engine, the subsequent engineering investigation found a bad bellows and the P3 bleed air valve. I mean, kind of shit you don't care about, but yeah, we just, bad luck, man.
Was it a miracle that you guys survived?
Yes. Everybody who saw that, all the people who saw the crash, the CO came into the hospital to see us and was like, good job. And turned to the doc and said, as soon as they're med up, I want them flying again. And then he walked out, shook our hands and walked out. And everybody who had been out there to see it, all the Huey guys had been out to see the crash site, came when we got back to the squat, to our little space. By the way, this is the same place where we had I took the crap. This was all during that same. It was a rough 6 weeks, man. It was a tough 6 weeks.
Holy shit, dude.
It was a tough 6 weeks. But yeah, I walked away. Later, I've got a ruptured disc in my spine, and but probably from that,
Can you eject out of those things?
No. Yeah, the Russians have an ejectable helicopter. There's only one. The Russians have an ejection seat helicopter. It's the only one in the world, and it's got these twin. It's hard for me to describe it. I think it's the Hokum, but it's got 4 blades, and they have explosives in the blades. And when you pull the ejection seat, it blows because you can't eject out into the blades. I mean, ejecting into a blender. You can't eject out of that.
Yeah, what the fuck?
That's so they have explosive.
You're like.
charging.
Those things you put a hard-boiled egg in that you're like your mom has back in the 80s and you pull it down and it puts in a nice thin slices. Yeah. It's like one of those.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, I suppose. Yeah, there it is. Yep. The cam off or whatever. Yeah. And that has it has explosive charge in the rotor head. Like I look at that rotor head and I get horrified. I'm like, get out of here.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Not a chance.
Why? It's too much rotor head and you think it's going to snap off. It's just too much.
Hey, the joke about helicopters is that it's 1 million parts flying in loose formation together.
That's horrible.
It's there right at the top, at the very top of that thing on a Cobra. It's called the Jesus nut.
Oh, I think I remember you telling me about the Jesus nut.
Yes. Because if that comes off, that's the only thing that's coming out of your mouth.
That's it.
That's it, baby.
So how bad were you guys injured? Were you conscious when you crashed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The last 35 feet, I had this moment.
You saw Jesus?
No, it's funny because what went through my mind was not, am I going to die? What went through my, like at the last moment, as we're coming down. I mean, it's like dropping. It's like being in an elevator with the cable cut.
Yeah. Wow.
So now you're just, everything in between. It's like my buddy Bobby says about heights. I'm like, oh man, I'm terrified of heights. I think or maybe I'm terrified of falling. And he goes, I don't know, man. He goes, you could probably fall forever and get used to that sick feeling in your stomach eventually. He goes, it's the stuff at the bottom that's really the problem.
Right.
And so when you're actually falling, you kind of, that goes through your mind. Like, I mean, it did for me. And so at the last minute, I sat bolt, like I got myself in the seat, and the front seat, the back seat of the Cobra has a stroking seat. So it'll actually bottom out and kind of dissipate the energy. The front seat is metal posts welded directly to the frame. So it's just metal on metal. And so at the last second, I leaned back and kind of sat upright to get my spine in as good a position as I could. And then you just rip up on the collective, kind of like you pull up on the collective. I always learned when you're trying to settle an aircraft that's landing is you pull as fast as the rate of descent is. And you try and match that and try and, increase the pitch on the blades and then slow your thing. And we smashed into the ground, broke the skids. The downslope skid snapped right off, buried into the ground. The tail stringer buried into the ground. The top skid hit and cracked. And we hit on the side of a hill. And then we hit. And I remember hitting, and like my head came down, smacked the telescopic sight unit, which is what you use to fire the TOW missile. I'm lucky. If I were taller, I would have taken that right in the face. That probably would have killed me. But because I'm a little short, I sat
not a little. When I came forward, the top of my helmet hit the telescopic sight unit. And then as soon as we hit, I saw the rotor blades bend down. They flexed all the way down, almost touched the ground. And I looked out my door opens on the left, which was the upslope slide. And the other guy's door opened on the right, which was a drop down this hill. So we stuck in, and I popped my cables, and he was screaming, "Get out." And so I flipped out the side of the helicopter, and it started to slide down the hill. And so I grabbed the door like an idiot. It's a 15,000-pound helicopter. I don't know what I was thinking. But I grabbed my door edge, and I tried to dig my heels in, and it started going like, it started, careening like it was going to go over the hill and roll down the hill. And by the way, it was fully armed. It had 2 7-shot pods. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
7-shot pods of rockets, 40 flares in the flare buckets, 1,000 pounds of gas in the bag. And I was sitting on the gunner pilot in the front sits over the can, which is where the ammo is for the 20 millimeter nose gun. And so I'm sitting on top of 600 rounds of high explosive incendiary. So we smash into the ground. I jump out, grab the thing. It starts going down the hill. And I swear to you, Sev, I got pictures of it. I'll send them to you. But it checked up on there was a little rock outcropping. And as the helicopter started to slide down the hill and tumble, it just checked up and caught on a hill and kind of stopped. And I'm holding onto the door, and I'm looking eye to eye with the guy in the back. This guy built on it. I'm like, "Are you all right?" And his helmet, like the glass thing had come down over his face, so his eyes were sticking out over his thing. I'm like, "Are you all right?" And he's like, "I'm like, well, get out!" Before it comes out.
Hey, how did he get out? Can he climb up to your front seat and then come out your door?
No, you can't. He had to like climb down, jump out, roll down the hill, and then we met at the front of the aircraft and kind of started hugging like we were.
You did hug.
Oh yeah. We were jumping up and down, as Bill said. I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but when people were asking him later what happened, he's like, "We was hugging like homos." He's like,
Yeah.
we were so happy. I mean, we were hugging each other. We were like, "Oh my God, we were alive." And then our wingman was, a Huey came and picked us up, took us to the hospital. It was funny. They had the flight surgeon in the back, right? And they land this Huey, and there was nowhere to get near us. They had to land like 300, 400 yards away on a flat spot. And they're yelling, the doc's yelling at us, right? And so what's he saying? So we start running over these rocks to get to him, and we're running, and we're like, "Wait, what's he saying?" There's helicopters overhead. We get about 100 yards away, and he's like, "Don't move. Don't run like 300 yards." And then you can see the doc just throw his hands up in the air. He's like, "Oh, fuck, just come on." We get in the helicopter. He's poking us, "Are you all right?" We're like, "Oh, we're fine." Yes. So.
Dale, Saran, always awesome to have you on. I hope that you can. I hope you continue. I knew it's funny. I have all these notes, but I always know I'm like, I hope it'll be so much better if Dale and I never have to turn to the notes.
Yeah. We'll just cover what we cover, man.
Yeah, you're such a great dude, man. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, I love it. I love coming on. You know how much I love this community and you and Caleb. Thank you. Thanks for your service, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your support.
And we'll be in touch. Talk to you soon. I'm sure I have a feeling you and I are going to run into each other in February. You and I are both going to the same Broken Science conference.
Yeah.
And if not sooner, I'd love to have you back on the show.
Yeah, I'll be out sooner. My daughter's living down she's living right down there in Seaside, man.
Oh, please call me every time you come. Let's get the families together. Yeah, every time. We'll party.
Promise.
Love you, Dale.
Peace,
Thanks for all the stories. Yep. Bye-bye. Damn. He's such a cool dude. So lucky to know him. So lucky to know him. I don't know how he got into a helicopter again. That's a nightmare. Allison NYC. Yeah. That is a nightmare.
You have to. You're gonna look like you can't just sit there and be like, "Well, fuck, I can never do that again."
Adam Blakesley, favorite guest. Yeah, he's God, he's an awesome dude. The video, the affiliate commercial, I don't even know if it's an affiliate commercial. Basically, we just had this idea that I would talk about what I thought about the L1 and I would talk about what I thought about affiliates. And then they were edited into, 90-second spots. And basically they were made, we thought we would use them so I could like run and do bathroom breaks. So that's why we wanted them to be just a little over a minute. And it's funny to me that I don't know. I don't think anyone, to be honest, is surprised. And I don't know how to say this with any humility. So maybe I won't. But I was the second person ever to do media on the media team at CrossFit Inc. in end of 2006, 2007. It was basically Lauren Glassman and Tony Budding who had made any of the previous media. And I was brought on. I worked there for a year for free. And the joke is that it was Sevan.com because I made so much content. I made an effort to put in a piece of content every single day. And eventually I became the media director, executive media director, which in corporate talk is the chief marketing officer. And I don't know anything really besides CrossFit. And I was there with all those numbers of our curves up and down, what worked and didn't work. I having this little fucking peanut of mine from 2007 to 2020. And we had some enormous growth spurts, the biggest the planet has ever seen for any chain, greater than, imagine the people like Starbucks, Subway, Apple, all of our metrics in terms of geographical growth passed all of them, not economic growth. God knows, like, if you're selling personal accountability, they don't sell nearly as fast as iPhones where people can watch porn. But Apple maybe is in 35 countries. We were in 162 countries. And it took me 2 years to understand this, but I was at the foundation of driving that. I'm not taking anything away from anyone else by saying that, but it was the media that drove that. Everything from the documentary in 2008, Every Second Counts, to the transformational videos going into 2017 and 18 when we were having some of the most explosive growth we've ever had in the company. And so it's it seems so simple to me to get this company back up on its feet, what needs to be done, because I see all the things that aren't being done. So yeah, maybe I'm even a little frustrated. But anyway, I'll just keep putting my head down and doing the only thing that I know what to do. There was that was just something we made for a bathroom break, and I just shoot from the heart. And so anyway, I do appreciate all the people who've reached out to me. I take complete. I soak my ego in all the love you guys have been giving me. That coming down from what you got, all this love you guys have spewed on the podcast over the last week has been just fucking crazy. I hate to see what the crash is going to be like, but I really appreciate it. Like I'm reading comments to my mom, like it's cool. You guys power me. And all of you in my DMs, I know I've slowed down. It's taking me like sometimes 48 hours to get back to them. I would just want you to know that every minute I'm shitting, I'm answering DMs. So just remember, and I shit a lot. So you guys are still a number one priority while I poop. Love you guys. Caleb, you the man. Thanks for being here. Always. We will see you guys. Do we have a live call-in show tomorrow morning, Caleb? Is that what we're doing?
I don't think there's anything scheduled, but.
Oh my God. I'm glad I stayed on an extra 30 seconds. top premier tennis class. You the man. Costas Anton, thank you. Appreciate it. That's a hell of a drawing too. Have a great day, everyone. Sean, Patrick Clark, good to see you in the comments. Like I said before, we're covering CrossFit better than CrossFit is right now. Allison, they need you. Thank you. David Weed, awesome dude. Yeah, Dale is an awesome dude. Adam Blakesley, favorite guest. I hear you. Bruce Wayne. I got to start from the beginning. Yeah, he's everything. He's smart and funny and edgy and enlightening, and that dude's a complete package. Jiggy Josh, always good time when he comes on. Jiggy Josh, I so appreciate your wisdom in all your comments. Don't think I don't see them throughout YouTube. You are my favorite critic. Even you're never harsh, but like Jeffrey Birchfield, I always feel like you give me love and help me point towards the true north. All right, guys, I will talk to you guys all soon. Bye-bye.